Wait a minute.
Hear this.
Birdie num num. Birdie num num.
What's up, ladies and gents, and welcome back to another episode of the Birdie Num Num podcast. I'm having a good week. Sanjay here. I really hope you all are having a wonderful week, getting on with your quarantine, with your lockdown, wherever you are in the world. Today on the podcast, I have received a question from a lovely listener, and that question was this. And this guy's name is Raja. So thank you, Raja, for sending in your question. I do appreciate this one because I can relate to it, as I'm sure many of you can relate to it. What is my English doing right now? How many of you can relate to it? So basically what Raja says, and I don't know Raja's accent, where he's from, but I'm going to guess India or somewhere. I joined a company this January after completing my BE, mechanical engineering, with very low pay. Now I don't want to go there because there was nothing to learn, and that doesn't improve me in any way. Well, I mean, you should still do the crappy jobs initially when you got the college degree because you need to know what you're avoiding. But then he goes on to say, my profile is not good. Can you please make a video about profile building, improving the extracurricular after college, or please give an advice on that? Well, I have made many videos, Raja, about profile building, but for Tinder and for dating apps. So I will not go into that. But what I will do is of course, I will talk about a common problem most of us have, because not everybody can be a topper. Not everybody can be the head of the class, the best of the best, a straight A student. So, Raja, and to anybody else who has watched the title of this podcast and been like, that is me. And the title is most likely going to be, if I had to guess, how to do well if you don't have good grades, which is ultimately the theme that I want to talk about. So that'd be funny. I'm probably going to change the title. It probably won't be that, but let's see. So one thing I got to say is, as every week, I always say one thing and then I talk about 5 things because we have a nice open dialogue, you and I, every week on the BNN, is obviously, you all know grades don't matter as much. You all know that if you don't be in the top 5% or top 10%, that your life is not going to be over. There's other ways to make money. There's other ways to get celebrity and fame and notoriety and the success and the dreams and the aspirations that you want. Okay. Now, the problem for most of us is, as could be in academic institutions, as you can see from the Bill Gates of the world and all these people, is when you hear a lot of that stuff, that grades don't matter, or you hear Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard, or freaking Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard, or the Google guys dropped out of freaking Stanford. LeBron James didn't go to college because he went directly to the NBA. You know what I mean? The late Kobe Bryant skipped college because he was that good to make it in the National Basketball Association. So if you're going to skip college, or you're going to say getting straight A's is for suckers or studying is for suckers, you better have a backup plan, because those guys did. All right. If you have a $10 million company by the time you're freaking 19, go ahead. College is probably not for you, because you've already learned through the school of hard knocks or the school of real life how to go about it, because you have college people working for you. Right? So why do you need to go to college if you can just hire somebody who went to college and teach you things about accounting or finance or whatever? All right. The second thing is, yes, the education system is outdated. Okay. Because it is an institution. Because to update textbooks and curriculums and, medical board licensing exams, and, people are Googling their conditions all the time, and computers have got a lot faster, where doctors love to complain. My wife is a doctor, so I feel I have some street cred here. Doctors love to complain about people who Google like their symptoms or their conditions or their diagnoses and all that stuff. But I would love to hear how many patients are wrong. You know what I mean? Like off of a simple Google search. If you have a certain rash or a certain 5 symptoms that you've never had before, I'm pretty sure a lot of the ones who do come in get reaffirmed that what they thought they had, whether it was I had a pilonidal cyst when I was younger. You know what I mean? I had no idea because the internet wasn't as good back then. But now, if I was like, what is this weird cyst? I'm sure I would probably I just got like a chill because I had to get surgery for it and stuff. So, yeah, dude, it's a very strange time to be in between these crossroads, because Even if the education system was like, hey, we don't know what the new economy is going to be. We don't know the gig economy, the freelancer economy, how to survive, what governments should do, how to keep you going, how much an app should cost to make, and should you do an app? Should you have a website? The education system is not being updated, then how will you know should you get good grades or not? So in the meantime, what I would say is number one, look, grades do not matter, but they definitely help. All right, you do not need to be born into a rich family to be successful, but it helps. I was watching the Bill Gates documentary last night, Inside Bill's Brain on Netflix. Check it out. Even though I say be mindful of how much streaming video you watch, this podcast included. So listen to me while you're cooking. You're doing something more productive. But Bill Gates's parents were lawyers, a lawyer and like a business person. So he was already a nerd and a geek. So he was using his time wisely. He didn't drop out of college to go party and just think the money was going to come in while he was playing rock music. No, he was, staying up till 4 a.m. working on code and that sort of stuff. So number one, yes, grades don't matter, but they definitely do help. Okay. And that's kind of the system you need to think about, right? Like, yes, you do not need to have a six pack to play cricket or basketball, but having the six pack means you are disciplined, means you're strong, means you eat healthy, means you have a lot of energy, which means you're focused. And all of that is going to be good when someone's trying to hire you to play for the cricket team or the basketball team or the NBA. And on the flip side, yes, having a six pack can be a great thing, and having a lot of muscles can be a great thing, but that's not the only thing. You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of people who have six packs who still drop out of the Navy SEALs or the Black Ops, or drop out of, don't make the team for whatever reason, even though they're taller or they're like good looking or whatever it is, right? So that's a big problem that I see in society. And I want you to know, Raju, or whoever is listening, guy, girl, whatever, whoever. I mean, like, it doesn't matter if you've made mistakes. Everybody is different. Maybe you grew up in like a single parent household. Maybe your parents were getting divorced. Maybe you were just distracted. Maybe you got caught up with drugs. Maybe somebody passed away. Maybe you were lazy, whatever, right? Whether you were a rich, spoiled kid who didn't study hard and now you bombed at all your courses, now you don't know what to do and you have a crappy job, or whether you were a poor kid and had life give you a bad deal initially, it's fine. It's fine, okay? Because here's the good news. As we always say on the BNN, the creative podcast for the middle class Indian, is there's so many ways to reinvent yourself right now in 2020. Raju, and everybody else had very bad grades. I got into a university in California, computer science program by the grace of God or somebody, because I did not get into any of the other programs, but I got into Irvine. I think somebody reading my application letter like took pity on me, or was just like really, it changed my life actually, because the reason that it changed my life is because I got into that school. Yes, I had a very hard time. My grades were not great. I was probably in the lower 50%, but I finished computer science. Had I done economics or management or something else, I probably would have made I probably would have got higher grades, but I wanted to finish computer science for me. I wanted to be like, I am a computer science graduate. It's like one of the top programs in California. I know if I do well here, there will be other opportunities for me. And so I had like one of the worst grade point averages. Barely graduated. I graduated in 4 years and I nailed it. Everything was great. I know people who did for 5 years, took their time, had lower grades than me, had higher grades than me, but I got it. I got it done. And my whole goal was I need to start working, but dude, my GPA is bad. And I don't want to like lie about my GPA. I don't really know if people check, by the way, because people are hiring. I mean, not right now with quarantine, but people are hiring so much and so quick that, like my first job, like this was so random. I applied to an internship right out of college at Symantec, Norton Antivirus, the company. And right when I applied, like a few weeks went by, you're clicking on some websites, monster.com, this, that, and I get a call from a guy and he's like, hey, I got your resume in front of me. Do you want to come in for the internship? Go for the interview. Nervous, like wearing a suit, big fancy office, like the whole dude. When you're like 21 and you walk into like a Silicon Valley office, receptionist, coffee machines, it's like bustling but also boring. But it's like fancy because the building is like intimidating and glass everywhere. And I go, and this was in Santa Monica, California, and I realized because I got the job, I got the internship, and 6 weeks later they made me a full time employee. 6 weeks later, they made me a full time employee. Was when people are looking like you will see a lot of jobs, Raju, and whoever else is listening that'll say we need a certain GPA or only these sorts of candidates. But if you're really ambitious, if you're really focused, if you're really determined, they're just doing that to keep their queue initially a lot easier to sift through. You know what I mean? It's like if you have a digital marketing business or you run a Facebook ad, you'll get a lot of emails from people who you think are customers, but maybe they're trying to sell you something. And guess what? Sometimes it works. Sometimes you are like, oh yeah, somebody saw my ad on Facebook and they weren't applying for the job, but they told me how I could run a better ad. Now I paid them. So that's a different topic. But the point I'm trying to make is like they're just trying to weed it down, but anybody can email anybody. All that's going to happen is you're going to get rejected or you're not going to get a response back. And so even the job I applied for at Symantec, I was like, I'm in the bottom 50% of graduates, although I am a computer science graduate. And all the Deloittes and Microsofts and Accentures and Googles and all that stuff, like I doubt they're going to hire me because they're going to ask for my grade point average. And I don't want to lie. They're going to call my school, yada, yada. And I still don't know how they do that, but I'm sure they do. I'm sure you can get a transcript if you sign something. And so I'm not saying lie about it, but I'm just saying like, go ahead and apply because the guy that hired me, really cool guy, South African guy, lots of fun. Like, dude, he didn't even look at the bottom of my application. He just saw that I knew SQL, SQL. He saw that I'd be okay to do some testing stuff because I did one testing project. He saw I knew Java, which happened to be the tool they were using. So Java, testing, and SQL, and Oracle database, which was my senior year project, something I did with Oracle. So he was like, oh, okay. And he called me and I just, worked my way through the interview and I realized this guy didn't care. He didn't want to interview 40 people. He didn't want to look at 40 GPAs and get some like nerdy Indian guy, nerdy Chinese guy, nerdy white guy, nerdy version of Sanjay Manaktala, who's not a nerd, he thinks. He was just like, I need to hire somebody. Anybody can do this job. If like, dude, if you are good at Windows 95 or Windows XP, or freaking Apple or shell scripts, you can figure out, how to use Unix and Linux and all that stuff. So he hired me, dude. And guess what happened right after that? Once I got my foot in the door and then I had that company on my resume, then I updated that on my LinkedIn, on my monster.com. Then all the calls start coming in from Microsoft, from even Google. Google had a photo solution called Picasso or Picasa something back then. I think they bought it from Flickr or Flickr bought it or whatever it was. But then they called me for an interview, which I didn't get the job. Then they called me a week later and they were like, hey, the other guy declined. Do you want it? But I'd already signed on to work at Accenture. But once you're in, then people are like, well, we don't care what his GPA was. If he was working for a couple of years at Norton Antivirus and his boss, or he looks like he was doing fine and, he did that, then he's in the system. He knows what the corporate world is like. So it's not like, I know it's not going to make sense to you because right now in your life, you think there's one hurdle, and that one hurdle is you have a bad profile. Like your school is not the best and your grades were not the best at that already mediocre school, which is what I'm going to guess is how you feel, or some of you might feel. And it's fine. I was the same. UC Irvine, where I went, was not like the best school. It wasn't a bad school at all. It was a pretty good school. Okay, fine. But it wasn't like the top of the top of the top. I wouldn't go to UCI for like my MBA. I don't think it'd be worth the 100K or whatever. But it's a good school. I was in their alumni magazine. I enjoyed it. But, like, was it for me? And it was. And after that, it was just another obstacle for me to overcome. Like now, how do I take what I got out of there and how do I figure it out? And I know it's easy for me to say in hindsight, let me just check the camera 1 second. And we are back. And I know it's easy for me to say, like, oh, it worked out for me. It'll work out for you too. But it may not, it may not work out for you. It may take time. Corona is not a very good time to be right now, obviously, quarantine. Dude, my wife is a doctor and she is looking for internships and research positions in radiology in America. And it's now like the worst time to try to bug any doctors, but you got to be resourceful, dude. I have this podcast. I saw another podcast aimed at foreign Indian medical people who want to work in America. And I emailed that guy and I was like, hey, you don't know me, but I have a podcast too. So we have something in common. And please get a radiologist on there. My wife would love to hear it. And who knows, maybe that'll be something. Like, you got to try with all the tools at your disposal, because here's what most people do. Most people will find, like, okay, I don't have the grades, so my life is over. No, it's not. There's like 50 other ways to get into the nightclub. There's 20 other ways to get into a movie theater. If one freaking theater is shut, drive to another. And if that one is, oh, the 8 o'clock show is also sold out, go walk around the mall with your friends, have a good conversation, wait around for the 10 p.m. one. Fine, you'll be late. Fine, it might take another year to get that job, but it happens, dude. Like, it totally, totally will happen, because the thing about corporate America, the thing about working, the thing about being in an office in Bangalore, in Delhi is, I know it's harder in India because managers and bosses love to act like, oh, now that I'm in IIT, or now that I'm in LinkedIn, we are like this. And they love to project like they're the gatekeepers, even though they're just HR and you're about to go make more money than them because you're in some engineering position. I assume, maybe. No offense to any HR people. But people love to act like they built this. You know what I mean? Like, that's the one thing I hated about working in corporate India, was when managers at Accenture, Wipro, or Deloitte would talk about their solutions and their company. And anytime I would try to refer, like one of my drivers, like cousins, friends, went to a decent school in Bangalore, but was like, hey, this guy has decent grades. He's in like the top 80% or whatever the percentiles are, and he's doing well. Good school. Even I have friends from my social circle who also went to that school. But because I mentioned it's like my driver's so-and-so, people were like, oh, yeah, it's really difficult. I was like, it's not difficult to work as a QA tester at freaking Philips. Okay, it's easy. It's not freaking rocket science, and we all know that. And no offense to anybody at Philips, but that was just my arbitrary example because I could see the Philips building from my house, So, like, people love to do that, but don't let that get you down, because if I were in your situation right now, which is probably the meat of what you wanted me to kind of give you some guidance on, I get so many messages like, sir, help me. I don't know what to do, or my grades are bad. What should I do? Or I saw your MBA podcast episode. Should I get an MBA? Well, bro, you're not helping me help you because you're not telling me what all you've done. You know what I mean? Here's a rule of thumb. If you're asking somebody to help you, if you're asking somebody for advice, give them information, because just like your crappy resume that you're saying you feel bad about, if it just says, 2.8 GPA, or it just says I was in the 50%, I just go next, right? But if it says I did this project, or hey, I was also working at these places, or hey, I built a website, or I built an app that helps people get coronavirus updates in their locality, or helps police officers, even if nobody ever used the app. You know what I mean? Like, we always hear these stories like, oh, so and so from IIT has designed an app, to help police officers in Bangalore update about coronavirus cases in real time. And it makes a good headline. And we're like, wow, that's great for that kid who made it. He's only 15 years old. But guess what? Nobody's using that app. All right. And that app is going on his resume, and that's getting him or her noticed. I don't think police officers are actually getting trained to use a new app every 2 weeks about some condition. And even if they are, how many of us download an app on our much better smartphones, I assume, than the cops have, and we barely ever use it? We're bored with the app in 2 seconds, right? By the way, Snapseed is my favorite photo editing app. If anybody wants to know, I'm just a big fan of it. So it's by Google, by the way. That's probably what happened to Picasa. Anyways, we go full circle, you and I, every week on the BNN. So, like, if you're saying that just because you have bad grades means your life is over, well, I'm not saying you deserve that, but that attitude is not going to get you anywhere, and that attitude is going to just resign you to a crappy life. All right. If you're then what's the point of changing anything? Somebody could say, I've always been fat. Now I'm fat at 25. Now I don't want to lose weight, or I don't want to get in shape, or I've always been single. So what's the point? I'll just not, either I'll just get in an arranged marriage and it could go sideways, or I just won't no, you need to keep trying. And the good news is Google has so many employees who have subpar grades, and Microsoft has so many employees who have subpar grades. But you know what those employees also have? They also worked in other areas. Why is it so tough to have to be a small business owner? Probably because you take chances on people in these mid. I'm saying small business like mid market. So, like I lived in Dumlur, Domlur in Bangalore, and basically that area had a lot of IT companies, but not the household name IT companies. So anybody who didn't have the chops, maybe, or couldn't get in, or maybe they did, but didn't work at, Deloitte, Microsoft, Accenture, Wipro, whatever, would work at these like Manju Infotech, KS Infotech, ABC Private Limited, Unisys. Well, I mean, Unisys is a big company, but you get it. And so those companies teach you because you will learn on the job. There are very few tech jobs I've seen in like my freaking however many years after college, and where you're not going to figure it out as you go. So yeah, it helps if you know Java. Yeah, it helps if you know C++. But you can learn all that stuff, as I say every time, for the price of two kingfishers, especially now with the inflation pricing in India. Literally for 1,000 rupees or 800 rupees or freaking $20, you can learn college level educations online or for free. You know what I mean? So, uh, Raju, do not sit around moping that you have bad grades and that your school was bad. If you have time to message me, I think you have time to send out 1,000 job applications. Yes, I say 1,000 because here's the thing, man. The time is going to pass anyways, right? You might think, how could I send 1,000? That'll take 4 months. Well, you're probably not going to send 1,000. I'm setting the expectations that you might send 1,000, so be ready for that. But maybe you'll get a good job after sending out 100. But what most people do is they just say, I had bad grades, and then they send out like 10 and they take the first job that comes their way. You may get lucky, like I did, I think. But I think I also would have sent out like 500 applications, and not 500 like click, send, click, send. I'm like, okay, each application should take 10, 20 minutes. And you should read about the position and the job title, and you should have a cover letter. And if you're applying for like a sales job at Google, you should like, even though it's not the job, like in tech, but if it's something in Google, customer service, whatever, you should use Google freaking cloud storage and like understand what that means for the enterprise and why small companies or big companies would prefer Gmail email hosting versus doing their own stuff, on MS Exchange or whatever. So, I mean, there's so many things I could tell you, but number one is you are your biggest enemy here. Like, look, please, if any of you are listening and you are in school, get the good grades because it's only going to make your life easier. Just like a six pack is only going to make your life easier. But look, dude, so many guys don't have six packs because most Indian men, especially, get six packs for the ladies. One of my favorite quotes I ever heard was, "Nobody gets a six pack to share it with one person." You know what I mean? Like it's a horrible quote, but it's kind of funny. So, but there's also plenty of guys, and we all have friends, that chubby dude, and you were not chubby, or like the less attractive dude, or whatever, and he's got the like super hot girl, or vice versa. And you're like, how did that person? Well, because they realize grades aren't everything. You know what I mean? My friend Varun Agarwal and I did a video many years ago, Anuanti, the engineering anthem. Please do look it up. I wrote the song. He created the video, and it was a good effort. Me, him, Samuki, and a few other people. Brother V, some of the Bangalore Janta, and we just made it happen, dude. And I was bringing that up for a yes. So later on, he made a company, Varun did, called Grades Don't Matter, which he's now renamed to a company. I don't know what it's called, but I know he's renamed it. But look, grades don't matter, but they definitely help. So please take that help and help yourself if you don't have good grades, and make it happen for yourself, because it's totally doable. I would definitely hire somebody who didn't have a 4.0 GPA or was not a class topper. Because here's another thing. You know why you don't want to hire a class topper all the time? Because they have options. So if you're trying to do something noteworthy, you think Elon Musk, SpaceX, right? Tesla, he's hired some engineers and people who went to like random schools in Texas. Texas State, I think, is one of the guys. Like, they didn't even have the best freaking marks. They're not from Harvard because they don't want to work the way he's working. They don't want to change the world. They want a cushy job on Wall Street or Silicon Valley where they go 9 to 5, say some shit about some stuff that's already done. I've never met a venture capitalist, like a real one. Like I've never been to a pitch meeting, But it must be so frustrating if you've built like a $10 million business and now like a 25-year-old kid is telling you why he thinks that's a bad idea. Like that's got to be rough because you've already built it to 10 million, you know? And so he's like, what are your monthly active users? And I had a high grade point, whatever. So you get what I'm trying to say. There is more than enough space in the world for everyone. And I would hire somebody if I saw they had way better work experience or they had way better use of their time and they use their quarantine lockdown time to focus on extracurricular activities, like learning, like exercising, like cooking, like playing music, like even practicing how to sing, like going for a walk, just stuff that keeps you away from this all the time because the people who use this less are the ones who are going to make money from people who use this more. So that's it for me, you guys, this week. As always, on Instagram, you can DM me your questions at Sanjay Comedy. Please do like, rate, review on all the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, and Stitcher. And I'll see you guys next week.
Birdie num num. Birdie num num. A birdie num num.